Android phone makers, what the fuck are you doing? Hey guys, Michael here. Welcome back to another video. Today's video is, as promised, the rant that I was going to talk about. Now, obviously, by the sound of that, oh, it's gonna be a boy ranting. I wanted to do this because this has been on my mind for a lot recently, and I think it's about time I finally said something. Well, I think it's time we finally address this big elephant in the room of what the hell is going on with Android phone makers, smartphone makers that are doing something, in my opinion, to be possibly something that's just dumb. And I'm not trying to bash, Android phone makers, but, what they're doing in this sense is kind of pathetic, and it doesn't offer anything new. So, let's start off with a backstory. In 2017, November of 2017, the iPhone X came out. While it has possibly one of the ugliest notches on a phone, it was at the time a first time ever for Apple. It introduced a brand new design, it offered brand new line of security for the iPhones, and it was a way to get an all-screen display onto the iPhones for the first time. In 2018, became the year of the copycat. So, I am going to put up a picture to you guys. I'm going to put it up in just a couple seconds. And I want you to tell me, I want you to look at it very carefully. I want you to tell me, do you see anything in common with all these phones? So, take a look at the picture, and then let me know. So, after looking at these photos, I want you guys to tell me, which answer did you pick? Did you pick same screen, same phone, or the notch? If you pick the notch, you are correct, because almost every single Android phone to date from 2018 forward has a ugly looking notch, starting with the Asus Zenfone 5 to the LG G7 to the Oppo R15 to the Doji V, which is basically an iPhone X ripoff, then the Huawei P20. I think I'm saying them wrong, but there are so many copycats out there, and they're not even copying Apple, they're copying the notch. And for no reason. Okay, the only reason I can see Apple getting the notch on the iPhone X, the only reason I was willing to let it slide was that it was all new for Apple. This was a brand new design, and this introduced Face ID and also got them closest, like I said, to a full screen display. Now, why are Android phone makers doing this? Are they doing it for the same reason? To give consumers better looking devices? Or are they doing it just intentionally? Nobody knows the answer, but everyone and almost any phone maker right now is making a smartphone with a notch, and it is disgusting. It's hideous. And now you're probably saying, time out, Frasca. Wasn't there a phone in the past that had a notch? And it was called the Essential phone? Well, yes. The Essential phone was technically one of the few phones to have a notch. But here's the thing. When the iPhone does something, everyone copies the iPhone. Now, that sounds like a biased statement, but let me pull up to you guys. Now, I'm not saying Apple's in the right here. I'll get into them, what they do, but let's pull up features that Android have taken, that Android smartphone makers have taken. Well, here are the features that Androids have that the the feature that Android stole from iPhone. Here it is. If you're probably wondering why I'm like this, I'm in a little rush, but look, here it is. These are some features they literally stole from iPhone. Now, keep in mind, this is all pretty much what these phones have been taking. Now, first one, when the headphone jack was removed, a majority of the smartphone makers removed the headphone jack because Apple did it first. What else did they do? Oh, AR emojis. Apple did AR emojis. Now you're probably saying, "Oh, wait a minute, but aren't you forgetting that some other company did it? What was that? For Bits emoji?" Well, yes, but this is something that Apple does for iMessages. Samsung went ahead and made their own crappy artificial whatever the crap. And also, let's take a look at also the app screens on Android phones. They are almost identical if you were to get an iOS interface on an Android device. Now, you can make an argument about this one, but the glass back. Now, keep in mind, even though the iPhones had a glass back now, if you go way back to the iPhone 4, Apple had a glass back. So going way back, the phones were originally in plastic. They had plastic backs where they were easy to replace. But once Apple did the iPhone 4, and from aluminum to that point on, it was glass backs on Android, especially Samsung. But I feel like I'm going off. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing them, because I want to say, like, personally, I am a huge fan of Android. I respect Android phone makers, and I'm not going to sit here and say that they're intentionally ripping Apple off. But when you steal designs, and not even that, but when you do things like this and they don't have any added features, you're basically going down the path making your phone, your flagship premier device, go down as an iPhone knockoff. And that may not be the case, because who knows? Maybe the phone that the Android makers are making are good. But the problem is, you put a notch on it and you make it almost identical to the iPhone, you're obviously going to get called a copycat. And who knows, maybe the features are good. And now, it's not like these are all their faults. I have to go back to the one person that started this whole thing, Apple. Now, Apple, you may think you're getting away, but Apple, you're just as guilty, because not only did you think to do something that many people are doing, you did it early for the headphone jack. Everybody's trying to get rid of it. Now, I mean, not everybody, but if you look at the Google Pixel 2, headphone jack nowhere to be found. You did it first. Slowly but surely, people are doing that. You then make the notch, and now everybody's copying off you. Now, why doesn't Apple sue? And there's a good reason. They're worth $1 trillion. Do you think they're going to go after companies? They don't even make a dent in the market. That can be debatable, because if you look at the recent quarters, it seems that most smartphones are coming really out of, out of China. But the point is that notches on these phones are not helping. They're not helping sales. Like, who's going to walk into a store and say, "I want a phone with a notch"? Nobody wants a phone with a notch. We want a full screen bezel-less phone. And that was what the iPhone was trying to go at. That was why the notch was there, just so they could get as much screen as they could. Now, Apple obviously is going to fix it in future updates, but there are some other phones out there that have actually done it better. If you look at the Oppo, now Oppo obviously isn't a big thing, but the Oppo Find X, that is literally one of the premier devices that is literally a full screen bezel-less phone. It's almost full screen. Even the Galaxy S9, while I am not a big fan of Android, I gotta say, Samsung has done it perfectly. Now, if you guys would come up to me and ask me which Android phone should you buy from, I'm gonna tell you Samsung. Because at least with Samsung, okay, they took the same design from last year and just released it. But here's the thing. Samsung didn't put a notch. Yeah, Samsung is known for stealing off Apple, but at least the design is something that could be usable. You have wireless charging, you have quick charging, you have a good camera, you got good stuff integrated with the software. Now, benchmarks mean shit on paper. That doesn't come down to the consumers. Consumers don't look at the specs and shit. They care about how it's in your hand, how it works, and how it's optimized with the software and hardware. That is what it comes down to. And this notch epidemic with Google, apparently the Google Pixel 3 XL may have a notch. If the Google Pixel 3 XL has a notch, if it releases a notch, I'm going to be done. Because it's not even trying to make an all bezel-less phone. Like, if you can't make a bezel-less phone and not put a notch on it, then there's no hope. I'm sorry, but that's how I see it. And I'm not trying to defend Apple, because Apple's the one that started this too. The Essential phone obviously came out first, but Apple was one of the bigger companies that put the notch on their phone for their reason alone. And they had a valid reason to put it on. Why these Android makers are putting them on, I don't know. Nobody knows. But I'm telling you, notches are going to die off soon. So this year, with all the notches being released on smartphones, it's not going to last. So my advice to Android makers, stop putting notches on your phones. Because you're going to make your phones be classified as iPhone copycats. And who knows, again, maybe the quality of your phones are good. But when you put a notch on it, and you promote it, and compare it to the iPhone X's notch, you're literally just setting yourself up to be a copycat. So, to the Android smartphone makers, get your game together. Hell, look at the Oppo Find X, if anything, or look at even some bezel-less phones. Here, let's give you a few phones, bezel-less phones, that are literally right now, there are five, I tell you. And the only 5 that they have that are the closest to bezel-less, the Oppo Find X, which you can literally look up. You got the Galaxy S9, S9 Plus, and the Note 8. And then, finally, if you even want to go a step further, you can even take the iPhone X, figure out a way to get rid of that notch. Or even the Xiaomi Mi Mix. I'm naming phones that have literally shrinking bezels. The Oppo Find X literally has none. If you wanted a good design and steal off Oppo, for God's sakes. That's all I have to say. So, I know I've gone off on this review and it doesn't sound like myself, but guys, I'm just sick and tired of going into a store, like to a T-Mobile store, and seeing phones that have notches. And seriously, everywhere I go into T-Mobile, I go to Verizon, I see LG has a notch on their phone. The Humei P20 Pro has a notch. All these phones are taking them off Apple. And Apple, like I said, you're the one that did this, so obviously everybody's going to copy off you. Now, I know this video is going to be very divided, and obviously it's not going to make sense, but if I have to come back and retrace my steps, I probably will. But that's all I got to say. So that's kind of my take on what I think of these smartphone makers making bezels that look like iPhone X. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know, what do you think of these notches on these phones? I want to know your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching again. Peace.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face, tell me that you love